Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Brian Vincic with Securematics. I'm the general manager here. And today we've got a really great webinar, if you will, around our back to school, back to the office journey. And what I wanted to do is introduce a few people that are on our panel today. So Mark Thames from Juniper. There's Mark. We have Sam Fadala for our safety. If I get the marbles out of my mouth today, Sam's a consultant with us as well as an industry consultant on this whole back to school, back to the office journey here. So I know we've got a number of new participants here today, so I thought I'd just introduce Securematics a little bit. So a little bit about us. We've been around for about 20 years. We do about $250 million worth of revenue per year. We're a little bit different than your normal distributor. We actually call ourselves an enablement company because we really like to go deep in the products and solutions and help you and your business achieve success there. The other thing is we focus really exclusively on networking, wireless security products and solutions. And our primary business is really only around 4 vendors, and Juniper Mist is our real primary vendor. And we have other solutions around SonicWall, Ruckus, and Pulse Secure, but Juniper Mist is a majority of our business. And really, when you hear about some of the solutions, especially how these solutions apply to today's challenges, we're really happy to be a Juniper Mist partner. We also hold about $50 million of inventory, and we've had, over a 15-year relationship with Juniper, and we're located in San Diego, California, which isn't bad, especially when we start getting into these winter months. And by the way, we used to have these FastTRACs, like I've said in other sessions, in San Diego, in person, pre-COVID days, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that because not only is it a great place to come to, but you get to see our office and you get to meet the whole team, and it's just a whole different environment than today. But I really appreciate everyone being here. Kind of a little bit of the backdrop for the seminar. If you have attended the last one, we focused a lot around what we call the first mile of the journey, and I'll talk a little bit about that. When this whole pandemic hit, we very quickly figured out that we had to go from home, work from home, and all the things that were involved in doing that and setting that up, right? We had to get a lot of logistical things straightened out. We had to make sure people had phones and the right equipment, and we kind of enacted our earthquake prepare, our disaster plan for an earthquake is actually how it happened. And so we got through that piece pretty significantly and in a very short period of time, I should say, and it was a significant effort to do it. But then around June or July, we said to ourselves, all right, our company journey's got to be coming back into the office because we're, our culture is more, since we're a small company, our culture is more being together and interacting and collaborating. So we set out to do this ourselves. And so that's what you'll hear in a lot of the interaction today is our part of getting back to work. And even though we've never fully gone back to work, given all the challenges and the shutdowns and everything, but we feel like we're prepared to do that. And you hear a lot about that solution, that technology that we use to do that. The other thing is that we felt it was important, at least as a parent, for my own sanity and my child's sanity, is to get kids back to school. It's not only important for us and the economy, but our kids are suffering. You see a lot of kids having challenges with, there's social challenges right now, there's behavioral challenges, there's a lot of students are not doing as well under this distance learning formula that we've been doing now for quite a few months. And so you're starting to see kids' grades go down. So it's important not only for the economy, but just for our kids in general, for their safety, well-being, and their them learning. So we always looked at kind of the technology part of this as a key enabler to do it. And it's very analogous to vaccine development. We're learning something new every day. We're doing trials, we're perfecting it. And I think we've come up with some really good solutions here. And I'll tell you right now, I'm really happy to be a Juniper Mist distributor partner because you know, as we're putting these solutions together, we're trying to figure out what's best in class. And I have to tell you that the Juniper Mist solution is definitely best in class when it comes to on-prem tracing and contact tracing, proximity tracing, and also occupancy levels, you know, monitoring occupancy levels. So anyway, what I want to do now is I want to go through, let's see, we have our first slide up here. And I think one other panelist I wanted to introduce was Keegan Wade. I don't know, Keegan, if you got a camera on, but he's a solution specialist that's really been focusing a lot on these solutions. We've dedicated Keegan to do this. So we're really fortunate to have Keegan join us today as well to kind of go through this. So, hey, Sam, do you want to kind of go through a little bit more of the agenda while we have it up?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And again, thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day today to join us for this, what we think is a super important topic and top of mind for everybody. But as Brian mentioned, so last session, we focused on health screening, and you know that was primarily focused on questionnaires. What do you do from when you're at home and getting to the front door, so to speak? And that's the first mile, and we'll do a quick recap of that. Then we're going to just have a panel discussion, kind of talking about the next phase of our solution, which is okay. You've had your health screening, and now you're on premise. Now what? And then finally, we're going to kind of dig into a little bit more detail around Juniper Mist specifically, how that can be used for contact tracing. And you know, you'll notice we interchange contact tracing and proximity tracing because some folks don't like contact tracing, so, but it's the same thing. So, and then finally, we're going to end with some questions and answers. So hopefully this is an interactive discussion. If anybody has any questions, please type them in the chat during the presentation. We love to answer questions throughout the entire webinar. So next slide.
All right, thanks. So Sam, let's quickly review what we did last time because we only have a short amount of time for this session. So we talked a little bit last time about kiosks and how important that first part of the journey is, and we put it in the context of students going back to school where, you know, there's some self-assessment that goes on in the morning. You know, what's your temperature? Have you been exposed to anyone with COVID? I was going to say kiosks, but and then from there, you know, once the student got or the office worker got to the door, then doing that temperature check. And that first part of the journey is so important, right? Because we want to screen folks. We want to make sure they're, you know, they don't have a temperature. People say, well, you know, it doesn't really matter that much because either the equipment can't detect it or the kiosk can't detect it, or, you know, gee, the self-screening is okay. I mean, what's wrong with that premise?
Sure.
Sam?
Yeah, I can cover that. So, you know, the first attempt at questionnaires at home, and these can be done on mobile phones. Typically, there's quite a few applications out there that can do these questionnaires. You know, just human nature. Folks are in a hurry. They can possibly get multiple readings from a handheld thermometer, or they could be busy, run out the door, and just plain forget to do the questionnaire. There can be it can just be something that's missed or maybe not handled correctly.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's important. Again, it's not the solution, but it's a piece of the solution, right? To ensure at least that you know, people are coming on campus, if you will, without a temperature, and that's an important piece. All these little pieces kind of assemble the best solution. There's no you know, 100% system or scheme that you're going to put together that's going to ensure no one with COVID comes on campus or on-prem, right? So, okay, let's go to the next slide real quick too. So we talked a little bit about this, right? We said that first step is at home, just a self-questionnaire. And then there's a bit in the middle there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Sam, around the compliant part, the non-technology part of it?
Sure. So part of this is from a non-technology perspective. Not only can you use a questionnaire on a mobile app, but there's wearable devices that can help with temperature sensing. There's basically, well, I guess we're kind of getting into some of the technology piece, but all of this information that we're collecting also needs to be, HIPAA compliant. You need to apply data privacy, things like that. So as we're moving from at home to on premise, all those things need to be kept in mind. So
okay, all right. And then on-prem we're going to focus on, so we won't steal any of that thunder right now. Next slide, please. So Sam, do you want to go through this one a little bit and explain it, this Internet of Behaviors?
sure, would love to. So this is it's really not a completely new three-letter acronym, but I think pretty much everybody knows IoT devices or Internet of Things. If you haven't heard of that term, it's pretty common these days. Internet of Behaviors is actually a subset of that. And what it's talking about is all these capabilities of, being able to utilize mobile devices, utilize Bluetooth, BLE devices, things of this nature to basically create a better user experience. So really, Internet of Behavior originally was intended to be used from a retail perspective, tracking people from, if they're interested in a particular item, wayfinding, various things like that. So what we've been able to do is basically take these technologies and then turn them into a solution for the COVID response. So here really quickly, it's got 6 components. The administration piece is really the dashboard, and that's how you're managing it. The self-assessment piece we talked about, that could be a mobile app. Then you're going to go into the health screening piece, which is pretty much a temperature sensing kiosk. Then you're going to go on-prem, which we'll go into more detail later, which is contact tracing. Then finally, congestion monitoring. That's a bunch of folks crowded in a particular area. And then finally, the all-important reporting for your own human resources aspects or things of that nature. So.
Okay. All right. Great, Sam. Thanks. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit last time around these health screening kiosks. Again, we're not going to go over it again. If you'd like more information about that, or you'd like a recap of that session, we could provide that to you. So just either put a comment in the chat box or contact your rep. Next slide, please. So Sam, do you want to go through this one a little bit? Again, just very briefly, because sure. I don't want to encroach on our topic of the day here.
Absolutely. So the on-prem piece, again, so we've made it to the school entrance. They've interacted with a health screening kiosk, temperature sensing kiosk, and now what? So it's just some options to consider as this slide suggests. There's various things that we can do now that they've passed this temperature sensing kiosk. We can actually have an app on the phone that shows a green pass, and maybe that's, they can gain entry that way, and now that they've gone through this particular screening step. We can also use, BLE devices like this lanyard right here to basically, once they come on-prem, now we can do this breadcrumbing or contact tracing piece, or that could be an ID card or wristband, or there's other methods to do that. And then finally, all of this information is you can log this information. So I found it kind of interesting going to some of these restaurants where they have you sign a piece of paper, and that's supposed to be their version of contact tracing. That doesn't seem too great to me. So we can actually do it with some of these solutions that you actually have a real solution. And then again, the final point is all of this can be integrated to your existing HR system, and it can be encrypted, secure. and with HIPAA and data privacy in mind. So that's kind of the high level quick pass on premise.
All right. All right. Well, let's get into it now. Okay, Sam. So next slide. So why don't we go through what we see are the different components of the solution here.
Okay, great. So our safe office technology solution, and again, this, there's more to this than just technology, but right here we're going to focus on the technology aspect. And the number one item, as you see, is Juniper Mist, the AI-driven wired assurance platform. Juniper is the backbone of our solution. This is what's allowing us to do all that contact tracing, breadcrumbing. The Juniper Mist APs have Bluetooth or BLE sensors in them. And this is basically where we're driving all this data to. So super important. And then we mentioned the kiosk already. That's item number 2. 3, this is actually a Contactio BLE device as well. And they come in different little packages as well. Here's a tiny little guy. And all of this actually helps create greater resolution into the solution. So you can really tell where folks are inside a building, for example. And then finally, none of this information is any good if you can't put it into an analytics platform. So
okay,
that's item number 4.
All right, thanks, Sam. Hey, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what is AI-driven wired assurance? Just so folks know. I know that's an internal term we use, but
yeah, it's really the AI-driven enterprise, right? Wired assurance is one of the capabilities for hardwired switching, like the EX switching line. There's wireless, assurance. There's now going to be WAN assurance as well, with SD-WAN. But the Juniper Mist AI, really it starts with the AI cloud, which is truly a platform. And what it allows you to do is get telemetry location-based information that you can put into APIs, as well as reportings through tools like Premium Analytics, where you can create ways to do things like contact tracing, user journey mapping, which I'll get into in depth here in a little bit. But it's really it's using machine learning and AI, not Will Smith on chasing a robot, but true AI to improve your operations and the user experience, but to give you capabilities to be able to do things like this with technology versus doing it manually.
Okay. And why is Juniper Mist so uniquely qualified in this whole, this whole infrastructure we're talking about today around these COVID solutions, lack of a better term? I mean, is it something that other competitors could easily do, or what's unique about Juniper Mist?
The most unique part of it is there's a 16 BLE antenna array built into the access point, and that is a patented technology. And what this allows you to do is, if you have at least 3 APs or triangulation, you can see where an individual is. Like, I'm in a conference room right now that has 5 chairs in it. If there's 5 people sitting in each chair, I can see each person where they're at. And the other thing that makes it very unique, that we do have this advantage over other competitors, is other competitors have to use third-party beacon technology. But even with that, we can see 5 different vectors of connectivity. So we can see, wireless connected users, but we could also see unconnected wireless users. So somebody has wireless enabled on their phone, but they're not connected to your network. We can see them, right? Same thing with Bluetooth Low Energy. If you're connected through a mobile app, we can see that. But if you're connected through BLE, we can see that. But more importantly, if you have BLE enabled, like I have an iWatch on, so I know I have Bluetooth enabled, even though I'm not connected to the office, I can see this, right? And that's an advantage that we also have. And these things are important when you're doing congestion and hot zone notifications and user self-policing. So there's a lot of tools that we can do because we have 5 vectors, and we're the only vendor in the industry to have all 5, and to have that technology be patented, where the antennas are basically a part of the wireless access point. And so that's where the advantage comes.
Cool. Okay, Mark, thank you. And we're going to get more into that in a bit here. So Sam, let's go to the next slide here, unless we're already there.
Sure.
So let's go through that concept a little bit.
Okay, thanks. Great. So here's the point, that you can do as little or as much as you want. And this is a tiered solution where you can basically modularize it, so to speak. So, a good a good solution might just be the facial recognition and temperature sensing kiosks at the front door. Certainly, in my opinion, better than a piece of paper and having folks sign in. But a better solution would be the facial recognition kiosk, temperature sensing kiosk, and maybe you add some lanyards and you add some ID cards, and now you've got the capability of tracking somebody. Okay, they've gone through the temperature sensing health screening piece, and now they're inside, and we can see them. And then, of course, the best solution is all of these things that I've already mentioned, combined with the Juniper Mist AI platform and premium analytics. Now we can actually see where everybody's doing, do the breadcrumbing, and actually log that data, which is really important in case you actually do have someone that we have a concern about. So that's those three options.
Okay, great. Okay, so we kind of laid the foundation, right? And why all this stuff is important, how it interacts. I think some of the unique capabilities that Juniper Mist has, and we're going to get more into that, that'll become more obvious to you as we go through this discussion. But the next slide is around a little bit more of the analytics, right? So Sam, were you going to talk about this? I'm sorry, guys, or was Mark?
I can talk about this here. This is a view of the Mist office.
Go for it, Mark.
Yeah, the Mist corporate office in Cupertino. Basically what this is we've set up the office and separated things by zones. So you have, Marvis is our virtual network system, but the Marvis team, for example, there's too many people in that zone, as well as the QA area. Obviously, that's great because we have a lot of QA people making quality products, right? But the problem on this is that they're over 150% of occupancy in that zone. So you can create zones and then see how many people are in those zones. And where you could use this in a school is you could see, are there too many kids in the cafeteria gathering around the same area? You need to go police it and have somebody go break it up. Too many kids in the gym, too many kids in a classroom. But more importantly, from a compliance standpoint, you can also take these analytics and know what's going on there, so that if you are trying to show that you're being compliant, especially, you have school boards, parents, things like that saying, are you keeping my children safe? They can go in and prove through these actual technologies that they are, in fact, right? And they have these tools. So there's a lot of things you can do with this outside of a school, but for schools specifically, those are some things you can do. And this is native within the Mist cloud. So if you're logged in to the Mist cloud and you go into the analytics area and you click on occupancy and analytics, it's already in there. But I can tell you what our partners are doing is our partners are creating their own apps for schools that have this in it, right? So they can see it and everyone can see it, as long as a lot of other things that you can do, like attendance and call the hooky police. Kids tries to leave the building and you take their parents, and things that would have gotten me in a lot of trouble when I was in high school, right? But there's a lot of things you can do with this technology.
Okay, that sounds good. So just kind of to recap, again, looking at our own journey, we had to solve that first mile problem to make sure that anyone entering the building is at least referenceable as healthy via their temperature and their pre-screening. And we even deployed some other wearables, right? I won't go into those right now, but anything to ensure the best we can that people walking in the door are healthy, or at least don't have a temperature. Let's start there. And then once they're in the office, again, we did, and Keegan's going to go over this in a little bit. What we did is we assigned lanyards. Can you hold one of those up, guys? Sam, or okay. They're lanyards, just wearables. They come in all different flavors. There's a tag. You can even get a bracelet. Yep, there's the tag one that Keegan's showing. And so we assigned one of those to each employee. And what we had to do in the background, though, is that just not only installing the physical hardware, as we had to, like Sam said before, we had to set the rules, right? We had to make sure that we understood that that conference room down there should only have 3 people in it. And we also wanted to have more of a rewind feature so that if somebody showed up a couple of days down the road and said, hey, I've been tested positive for COVID, then we can reasonably rewind the tape, so to speak, to see, if they were in a conference room with someone or down the hallway, so that we could do notifications and all that stuff. We get into this at some point, but all that stuff you could do with a lot of integrity and privacy like Sam said before, we want to make sure everything is more like HIPAA compliant. There's definitely, we discovered that you could absolutely achieve that. So let's go through a little bit, Keegan, on that first part, right? All these Bluetooth devices, and let's walk through that part of the journey.
Certainly. Yeah, my name is Keegan Wade. I'm a sales engineer at Securematics, and I'm going to take you through. I think first we have some of the devices that are in use, correct?
Yeah. So next slide, please.
So as Sam and I just showed you, you can use a few different developing or badge companies to interact with the Bluetooth network. We just happen to go with Contactio. Contactio has a really easy to use system in terms of bringing on devices into your dashboard and also configuring those lanyards in your dashboard. And the next slide, please. And then, so here's some screenshots of the Contactio app that's on the left. It shows us the devices in proximity to your smartphone, and you can actually edit the lanyard devices in that mobile app. You can also, likewise, you can do it through the dashboard, and I'm going to show us a quick example in the dashboard of how that looks and what needs to take place.
So Keegan, before we do that, before we roll
Sure.
that demo, so what we did is we identified Contactio. We know that obviously the Juniper / Mist infrastructure, we have to be able to have a lanyard. That's the only way we're going to be able to tell. I mean, you could do it through a mobile phone, but we felt like the lanyard was probably the best way of doing it. We ordered 50 of them, and they actually came pre-configured to our dashboard, right? We registered when we put in the order for the 50. They created our own instance, if you will, on their portal, and they registered all the 50 devices to our email address, and they all appear and they're active. It's funny, when we first got them, because they come from Poland, they all had, you could see exactly where they came from. How do you ingest something like that into the Juniper infrastructure, so to speak? What's the next step in that?
It's quite simple. I mean, you just have to bring it on premise with your Bluetooth enabled Mist network, and the Mist network will detect these Bluetooth devices since they are chirping. So, and I'll take us through a quick tutorial on that as well. But yeah.
Okay, great. So it's pretty simple, because when we first received the lanyards, we kind of didn't know what to do, right? We had this Contactio, what we thought was a gateway, and we weren't. I mean, we were kind of wrestling with that for a bit, right? Until we figured out that I guess it was a lot simpler than we thought. So, do you want to show the demo next, or is there anything else you wanted to cover?
Is there the Bluetooth? I mean, not that it's that informational, but I think there's one more slide before that, correct?
I think there's.
I think you're okay.
Yeah, I think that's it. Right, Bailey? I think there's only the Contactio, and then there was a video. Would you want to cover something else before the video? Want to cover the access points?
I mean, you can use a few different Mist devices for the setup. So I think there's the Mist AP 41, the 43, the 21, and the BT11, and there might be a few more, but pretty much any Mist AP that has Bluetooth enabled will work for this setup.
Okay. Can I add one thing real quick that's really important? We have a lot of of school districts and things that want this technology, but they might have just recently in the last year or two purchased a new wireless system. And it's still on their books and they're still depreciating it. This is where we use the BT11s, the Bluetooth only access points. And so we've actually had customers that want this technology, but couldn't get it approved to replace their whole wireless network because it was still new. So we deployed the BT11s instead. And that's also another thing to where if you have someone where they're like, oh no, I like my wireless system, but I really want this technology, it's a great way to introduce them to Mist as well. Because normally what happens is they install the BT11s for Bluetooth only, and then they fall in love with the system, and then they wind up replacing everything else as they go through with the actual wireless and the more like the AP43s and things like that. So it is an option.
It's an excellent point, and the BT11's price point are a lot more favorable.
That's true.
Right?
That's correct.
Isn't there CARES Act money and all these other?
Sure is. Yeah, there's a lot of CARES Act money, and we've actually had some schools use the CARES Act money to fully refresh their wireless system because this is a part of infrastructure. And a lot of it was they were having issues with wireless or here and there. I'm in the Dallas area. We have a school here, school system here that was having a lot of wireless problems just in general. But now, because of the CARES Act, there's funding, millions of dollars in funding. Schools are using them in different ways, but one of the ways they can use it is to replace their wireless infrastructure for this technology because it has to do with contact tracing and using safety measures to open up in the COVID to open up schools. So, and I believe that, as they go through and as, we get through more packages from Congress that goes through, there'll be a lot more funding for schools, right? And this is the technology where they can use that money.
And by the way, anyone out there that wants us to put on a special session for your end customer, we're more than willing to do that. I know it could be a little bit daunting talking through the full solution. And that's why we have guys like Sam on, because there's technology pieces of this solution and there's non-technology pieces of this solution when it comes to PPE and the way you set up your workspace, signage. I mean, it's endless. So we want to make sure everyone understands we have a complete solution, not just a technology solution of it. So kind of back to the program. Keegan, do you want to go through your demo?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Okay.
So we have a few short videos. So here I'm in the Contactio panel. I'm just heading over to the beacon list. I just type in lanyard into the search query. It comes up with all the devices that I've named as lanyard. I picked, I think, old lanyard 5, which I gave a name. So this video is a little quick, I guess. But in this view, I can actually modify the transmitting power of the device. I can modify the chirp setting. I can modify the name. I can also enable and disable certain packets. And then once I hit save changes, it will sync with the device. So once again, really easy and quick to use to update or change the settings on your lanyard. And you can also do this in bulk edits too. So if you have obviously 500 lanyards that need to be updated, you can do this all in one push. So
okay. So those devices obviously could be managed via this portal. And again, this is not something it's exclusively managed through this portal. And the reason why we do things like chirp and DB is to make sure we get a good battery life out of these units, right? And also you want to make sure we kind of fine tune these to our environment, correct, Keegan?
Yeah, I think most importantly, the devices come with a very low power setting and a very high interval of chirp setting, and we want it to be in order to have better location data or better precision on where these devices are, we increase the transmit power and we decrease the chirp interval. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, so we got that set up, and then we attached everything kind of together. Next slide, please. Or do we going through the? Looks like we're going through the slide again here.
Yeah.
Or the demo.
I'm actually missing one kind of important slide here, which is when you get into the Mist panel, you'd head over to clients and I can maybe show this later if we have time or whatnot, but we go to clients, and I just type in old lanyard. And so since that device is named old lanyard, when it communicates via Bluetooth, it actually communicates with its name. So you can actually go through the BLE clients in the MIST portal, type in old lanyard 5 or whatever the name is that you named your lanyard, and it will be just automatically discovered there. So in order to throw the device into the location engine for even better precision, we click on the lanyard, we enable it as an asset, and then this allows it to be, once again, thrown through the location engine and allows for better precision for, better, So unfortunately, I don't have that slide. So in this slide, though, it's just after. So we're going to go through, if you don't mind playing it, we're going to go to location, live view, and this is going to be our primary site actually at our Securematics office. We're going to head over to assets, and you can actually see old lanyard 5 with the which is the device that we edited in Contactio, and you can match the same MAC addresses. It is the same device.
The green thing, right down there next to Open Office.
I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I saw the green star there next to Open. I was just making a comment.
Oh, okay. Next slide, please. So if we go back to live view, we can actually see, once again, old lanyard 5. And is this a repeat?
Nope.
This may be a repeat slide.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so the next thing we want to do is add zones. And so what zones will do is they allow us to set occupancy settings for different areas on your map. So here I added bathroom. Obviously, that's probably not the most necessary zone to add, but I think we have a few different zones like lobby, your back office, certain areas that we want to monitor for occupancy settings. Next slide, please. Is it repeating? Okay. So next we are going to head over to Premium Analytics, and this is actually a setting within MIST. So here we are changing the occupancy data for each zone. So in lobby here, I set the maximum occupancy to 6 in the lobby. And in the next slides, you'll see how that will communicate with Premium Analytics. So heading over into Premium Analytics, we can see in the top left of the most viewed or most visited areas. And I can also scroll down and see all the different why am I forgetting the word?
Events?
No, the thresholds that are being met in each location. So here we have, and I should probably do this live next time, but here you have on the red and the orange, you're hitting over 100% occupancy, which is over the threshold that we hit. And from this, from hitting this threshold or hitting over this threshold, we can actually send out email notifications or notify the user or administrators that this zone was hit with, while hitting this threshold, and these users are currently in that area.
Okay. All right. So just in summary, I know that demo is sometimes a little hard to follow, but in summary, what we did is we set up our zones. We set up the rules around those zones. We set up our lanyards, gave a lanyard to each employee. And now in the background, all that's being monitored and sending out alerts based on the rules we set up, right, Keegan?
Correct.
Okay, so very, and again, we should probably have a session that for solution architects, sales engineers, that we can go through the whole dashboard and setup. But we want to impress on you that it's a process. It's a fairly simple process too. Even though the technology could be very daunting, we found that it's a very logical process to follow, and that's part of the reasons why we wanted to do it ourselves, is we wanted to understand what that journey was going to be about for our customers. Sam, do you want to cover the next slide here?
Sure, I'll just jump in and Mark and I can share this section. But
that's what
yeah, coming off of this, Keegan's presentation, one thing I just kind of wanted to comment is that maybe that gives you just an idea of how flexible this system is. And that's what I really like about what we're doing here is, again, me personally, with my experience, I like the fact that the organization can decide, how granular they want to get, how many people should be in a particular room. And besides that, there is this whole other aspect from a regulatory perspective, and it's different across the board. It's different in the state you live in. It's different in sometimes your city, your county, and even the environment. In this case, we're focusing on schools. So, this allows you to have that flexibility to set things up the way you want. And from that perspective, Mark, I'll let you jump in and talk about proximity tracing.
Yeah, let's talk about some roles here. When it comes to COVID-19 and support for contact tracing and proximity tracing, there's a couple of things. There's some roles here, but before I get into that, I want to let you know something that's very important. There's one big misconception about all of this, that this is the invasion of your privacy. I call it the invasion of the privacy snatchers, right? It's actually further from the truth than you can imagine. And some of the technologies that have been created were based on privacy. If you look at the initial responses, and especially in places like China, for example, government, public health institutions have roles. Their real role is to be able to track at a global level the numbers, and obviously that varies from country to country. And believe it or not, it's because of politics in different countries. Some countries are, they don't want to tell you what's really going on. They want to keep things hidden. Whereas, the United States, we're, have expanded numbers, because there's even, conspiracy theories about, oh, I tested positive, and, just to get the numbers up so they can get money from the CARES Act, right? But there are roles here that the government does play. In the early days of this with contact tracing, it was very invasive to your privacy. If you looked at what was done in China, they used GPS, they tracked you. You notice how we don't use the word tracking, because that's a bad word. It's tracing, right? But before, they did it pretty bad. I know in South Korea, if you tested positive and you left your house, they put an ankle bracelet on you. Do you think that would fly here? I don't think that would fly here, right? But they do have a responsibility, and technology also has a responsibility here. And one of the cool things is, because of the way that these technologies were created, the first country to actually use Bluetooth Low Energy was Singapore. But they created an application that used Bluetooth, but they screwed up because you had to have it open 24/7, which drained your battery. And the first thing it tried to do, I downloaded it, try to text all your contacts to tell them to download the app. So as soon as you download the app and enabled it, it texts your entire contact database saying, please download this app and join my contact tracing thing. And it just screwed everyone up. So there's been a lot of false starts, was my point. But believe it or not, Apple and Google did create a good exposure notification log, which is available in quite a few states now. I know that the latest state to have a new app is Colorado, believe it or not. And the interesting thing about this technology is you can only use it if a state government actually creates an app for it. They don't let enterprises do it. So there was a misconception that Mist and Juniper can integrate with Apple and Google, and that's absolutely not true. But what Apple and Google did is they created a way to respect your privacy when letting you know that you've been infected. And you might not know it, but it's part of the operating system of your phone now, to where if you're around a complete and total stranger and you've been standing next to them and they get infected and they go self-disclose that they've been infected, and you go check your log, you can tell if you've been exposed to COVID-19, even though it's a completely total stranger. You could have seen them at Home Depot in the line, right? That technology exists. There's probably 20 states that are working on it right now. Some other states aren't. Believe it or not, it's still very political. Why? Because of the news. Oh, it's the invasion of your privacy. It's actually not, right? And then there's other things that enterprises have to do. They have roles. You know, we have to open up our offices safer. We have to open up our schools safer. What are the things they need to do, right? So, you know, Juniper, we consider, you know, K through 12 an enterprise account, right? But they have to make decisions on things that they have to do on to open up the schools safer, right? And there's technologies that they can use to be able to do that. And how they get that technology, they get it from Juniper and Mist, they get it from Contactio, they get it from, you know, a lot of the kiosk technology. That's technology that they can get, right? But the neat thing about the Mist Juniper, you know, solution is that it's using location services to do things and automate things, but also it integrates into other technologies. You might not know that this technology integrates into ServiceNow's HR system, because we do have laws like HIPAA, and we have to respect privacy. And one of the neat things about the Contactio badges and even the HID badges, the others, is they see it as a number. So if somebody from the IT department's looking at it, all they're going to see is like a MAC address number of the badge. They're not going to see who it belongs to. But it can be integrated into HR systems where they can properly notify people if they've been exposed. And it's very interesting. I saw a really crazy commercial where they were talking about all these new roles, and there was a person that said their new job is a contact tracer.
Wow,
Like,
really?
yeah, I saw it on a commercial. I'm a contact tracer, and that's the way they've had to do things. You know what the person's job is? If you get exposed from the government, one of their roles and responsibilities is to notify people. So they call you when you're sick and say, who did you talk to? Where'd you go? Give me your numbers, give me their phone numbers, give me their email addresses. And they manually call these people. You know, my son goes to school. He's actually in a high school right now in Texas. And we probably get every week, probably 1 or 2 emails that tell us if somebody has been exposed at the school. And one of my friend's daughters was in a class, and their teacher had it and tested positive, and they were called by the school from a contact tracer. Now we can do this using technology to know exactly who was impacted and be able to do that. So there's a lot of roles and responsibilities here. We can probably go to the next slide.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, we're going to the next slide. I mean, you bring up a good point, is that, you know, it's just MAC addresses and devices. You can have one administrator, just like your HR department, be able to match up that MAC address to that person. No one else has to know. It's super encrypted that way, right?
Yeah,
So
it is.
That's something that, as you talk to your end customers, you can, you know, tell them that they could rest assured that there's no privacy issues there. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and the other thing to notice with that Apple Google solution, the way they created it using Bluetooth Low Energy, it randomly changes the address of your Bluetooth every 15 minutes randomly, between 10 and 15 minutes. So you can never track it back to who it actually is. So even Apple and Google has no idea who you are. And if you go get your exposure log and look at it, you have no idea who the person next to you was, and no way to figure it out. And they even cut it off at around 30 minutes. So that even if you were in a car, like if I was in a car with Sam for 2 hours, but I was with other people that day, you can only track up to 30 minutes. I couldn't even tell that it was Sam, right? So, I mean, there's things that they're doing to protect privacy that they haven't done before. And, you know, leading into this slide here, there's things that IT is being asked to do. So if I'm a CIO or director of IT at a school district, I'm being asked to do these things now, right? You know, contact tracing. Do we have technology for contact tracing? How do we do that? You know, does somebody come into close proximity with another person, and for how long, right? To let them know have they been exposed. You know, I use that example of my friend's daughter, and you know, got infected in her Spanish class, and they're like, well, should we go get tested? Should we quarantine her for 2 weeks? We're like, well, no, she has to stay home. You can go get a test. But the fact is, they've been wearing their mask the whole time. You know, they were in there for 45 minutes. So yeah, you can go get a test. But if it was somebody that's just randomly that wasn't in that class and wasn't in that class with the other student, you know, because they're not all in the same classes in high school, right? Then they didn't have to notify the other students because they didn't, right? But they have to be able to do this. Another thing that's important, you saw those occupancy analytics, is the congestion hot zone. This really shows where people are going and if there's exceeding the zones, and Keegan showed you how to configure some of that stuff, right? This is really important. It's also good for self-policing. What's user self-policing? This is something to where you can know if you want to go into an area, right? So for example, if there's, kids in a classroom or kids in a cafeteria and there's still too many in there, the administrators can look at there and say, it hasn't cleared out yet. Don't leave that other class leave to go into that area yet because it's not clear yet. They can use their self-police and look at the app to see if that zone's been cleared or not. You can use this just in your own. Let's say you go into the grocery store. Whenever I go to the grocery store, it seems like everybody is in the produce aisle. Have you ever noticed that when you walk in? Nobody's anywhere else in the store, but there's like 30 people trying to get, fruits and vegetables and coming up and sneezing on you, but you can go over to the, where the dish soap is and there's nobody, right? I mean, come on, now you go into a store, you can do this, and self-policing is you can say, hey, I'm walking into my store and that area is too crowded. I'm going to go buy these things first, right? So there's things that they need to do there. Social distancing, enforcing social distancing. My favorite social distancing tool that I've ever seen was Eric Cartman's 6-foot stick with the 6-foot flag on it. That was my favorite I've ever seen. But that's not realistic, right? But social distancing, you can actually do that to ensure people doing that with that congestion hot zone technology and being able to see all 5 vectors. And then, we talked about the entry testing with the kiosk. But what kind of technology do they need? This is where they need a platform. This is where they need to be able to find, all this telemetry data and this location aware data down to where the individual is. And that's where the Mist platform comes from. Just remember, I've mentioned a couple times, Mist is a platform. This is the first time Juniper's had a platform that things plug into. So, again, these are some of the things that help you. This is what enterprise is being asked of. And there's one other thing that's interesting that's not on here that's going to be a new norm going forward. And this kind of one thing I've heard is touchless environments. People want a touchless environment. They don't want to touch things anymore. They want to use Apple Pay. I have a personal record. I went to 5 Home Depots in the last 24 hours because I'm trying to buy all the, Philips Hue light strips I can find. But if you go in there, what do? You have to pick up a scanner, scan the thing. Nobody wants to do that anymore. You want to touch an elevator button? A lot of schools have elevators. My son's school is 4 stories. Do you want to use the elevator? No, but you know what you can do with Mist is you can use a virtual beacon to when you get to that elevator area, it can automatically launch. It knows what your next class is, what floor you need to be on, and you just hold it on and then boom, you don't have to touch the button. But those are the things that enterprises are being asked to do that you can do with the Mist platform. And so,
yeah, this is my virtual beacon right here. That's how I hit the elevator.
Like that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but again, there's technologies now to where you're going to notice even after this is, you can say it's over. Let's say, the vaccines that are supposed to be 95% effective sounds like amazing. But I think their mindset's going to be different after we come out of this. They don't want to touch everything, Well, it's going to be very interesting.
And one thing I wanted to bring up at this point is you can see all of these various activities right here. This is giving you tools that I think in the future, it's not going to be okay to go to school with the flu, let alone, COVID. And to Mark's point, the temperature sensing kiosk is touchless. There's a lot of devices that we can talk about that aren't really technology related, touchless soap dispensers, on and on. So I think just that push towards touchless and protecting folks moving forward, regardless of COVID, I just don't think it's going to be acceptable anymore.
No,
Yeah.
The only thing they need to figure out now is the door handles, because you walk into a bathroom, everything's touchless. Touchless water, touchless blow dryer, touchless everything. What do you do when you're done? You open the door handle, right? So, but anyway.
They have those little door hooks. They have the little arm door hook things now.
Yeah, we'll do that. And the good old butt works well for pushing it open. Anyway, okay, next slide. The conversation going here.
I have to be honest, I plagiarized that. That was a stand-up comedy skit from Ellen DeGeneres, which is very disturbing.
All right.
It's really funny to watch her explain the touchless bathroom. It was just fantastic.
My example.
So let's talk about the 3 things that Mist does, right? Because there's a lot of things, like I mentioned the Apple, Google. I mentioned that on purpose because there's things that it can do that are wonderful, but they don't solve the true problem at schools, for example. And so there's three main use cases that you can use the Juniper, Mist AI platform for, right? One of them is proactive, the other two are reactive, right? One of them can be built into a mobile app, which is neat. The other two are used through our premium analytics, and we have partners that are building customized reports that are amazing that they're offering as a managed service with these analytics to their customers. So there's a role for our partners here too that's very important. So let's talk about the proactive one first, which is the congestion notification. You've already seen that a little bit with some of the screenshots we've shown. But one of the coolest things I've seen is, we have a partner here actually in Dallas that has created an app that school districts are going to be buying, right? And it has the congestion notification built into an app. It's fully customized. The partner built it, right? They built one for a university. They can use it for university schools. Now that's a profit center now for that partner. You know why? Because they now have an app that they're licensing an annual software subscription to their customers that they're making the profit on. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I think my kid's school district has 5,000 students and probably 1,000 faculty. That's a 6,000 user license. Dallas ISD has 50,000 students. Just think about how much that license is. That's something a partner can actually generate revenue with. But you can put things in it. They put in things like attendance. You can take the attendance. First responder, right? These are other things you can have. If you're having an emergency in a school, a fire drill, earthquake drill, first, shooter drill, you can just see a lot of information, but that's all proactive, right? Now, if you go into things that are more reactive, it's the user journey mapping and the proximity tracing. These are things that are done with our premium analytics, and they're fully customizable by the partner. You can put your logos on it. I saw a great one where a partner actually took all those Contactio badges and put the individual's picture on it for an office. I don't know if you can get away with that with a school, but they had the photos, they could see it. And then, what proximity tracing is did you come into close proximity or within like sneezing distance, right, from another person, and how long were you next to them, right? So if you're next to somebody for 15 minutes, for example, like you're sitting in a classroom, then you know that you've been exposed, right? Versus just briefly walking through the hall from someone, right? But the other thing is user journey mapping. Where did they go? Right? Where did they go in the building? They might have only gone into a certain area. My son's high school is enormous. It can have up to 4,000 students. He doesn't go in the entire campus all day, right? So where did they go? I used this example of, I saw one, there wasn't a school, but it was the White House administrative office building. And, they basically had a worker in the cafeteria or the coffee shop that got exposed, and they had to shut down the entire building, which is a massive building, for 2 weeks because one person who only went into the cafeteria and worked in the back tested positive. And I have a friend who's a CEO, and he had one person test positive, and guess what? It cost him $10,000 to clean the building and to shut down his office for 2 weeks. Ironically, he just got COVID-19 and just actually finally tested negative just a week ago, and it's very contagious, right? And this is crazy stuff. I mean, he was on a hunting trip with 9 people, 7 of them got it. I mean, this is something that spreads, but you need to know where they're going. Yep, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to point out about just this whole aspect, this is kind of what I was bringing it back to, that whole Internet of behaviors. This, a lot of folks have asked us, well, what do we do when COVID ends? And, again, this is a lot more than just dealing with COVID. This enables all kinds of different applications, wayfinding, again, as Mark's mentioned, active shooter drills at schools, on and on. So the applications are kind of endless. So it's not about just solving COVID-19, although today that's our focus.
And I can say this is not going to go away. This is the new norm, right? And we have a whole new way of thinking. I mean, you got to remember the last time this happened was what, 1919, something like that, the Spanish flu. But this is going to be more common. Think about how many more human beings are on Earth than back then, and how many people live in the United States back then, right? So this is not going away. And the only thing that it can't solve, though, for the kindergartners is it will not tell you if you have the cooties, right? But everything else, you're going to be able to know. The flus come out. There's a lot of things that come out. It's going to be a new norm now, so this is just something that we got to prepare for.
Yeah, and every company and school has to, going forward, have a pandemic plan, believe it or not, right?
That's correct.
Part of the requirement. Just like an active shooter plan or an earthquake plan, fire. This has been added to the list. So you're right, it's not going away.
It's the new norm.
Yeah, it's the new norm. So, okay, why don't we go to the next slide, if you will, Bailey?
Yeah, and just kind of go this, I've gone through this a little bit. This kind of shows you some of the things you can do with premium analytics. Know, proximity tracing, we talked about this a lot. It's just knowing where people have gone, or not where they've gone, it's who they've exposed. And it can do it. You can see there's a lot of things. There's iPhones, there's, laptops, the badges like the Contactio badges and the lanyards and things. There's a lot of different things you can find with contact tracing. And I think the most important part is that, they, like you said, it's a privacy thing. A lot of these schools use ServiceNow, right? And that's something that's pretty cool, where you can see that we're integrating for HIPAA compliance and things like that. So again, I've talked quite a bit about this. Kind of just shows you a screenshot of some of the things you can do. I'll be honest, the best ones I've seen of this are the ones partners have created, because they've actually branded it as theirs. Because you can think about this, school districts are great for managed services like this, to be able to offer these types of things. They don't have huge IT departments normally, especially for some of the smaller regional schools. They might just have a few IT people. So this is also a very profitable thing for a partner to be able to create analytics and custom reporting that you can provide to your customers. And that's another value that you can offer to them to help them through this journey to get there. You can go to the next slide. User journey mapping. This is another one. Where did I go? We talked about the person that was in the White House, the admin building, but even in a school, where did I go? And this is just an example of how long they spent and how much time they spent in there. You can do a lot of things with user journey mapping. You can say, where did I spend the most time? And like for example, I just walked through the area. I might have gone through the front door and I didn't spend much time in there. I spent, here's the classrooms I was in. I was in there. I might have stopped by the library for 5 minutes. I might have gone into the cafeteria for, half an hour and spent a lot of time there. You can know. But one of the neat things I've seen is I've seen a partner create a user journey mapping where it shows the trail and the footprints of where somebody walked and where they went. And then based on where they were, how long did they stay there? So they knew which areas to clean.
That's important, Mark. I mean, that's a really important point, because often what will happen is when you first look at these solutions, people will say, well, I'm worried about privacy, so I don't want to, deploy something like this. Then the second is cost. And when you look at, like we said before, the CARES Act, and we looked at the cost of shutting something down. Same thing with my son's school, right? It's a huge campus. And there's multiple buildings, and you don't have to shut down the whole campus when there's an incident that one child's spending only a fraction of it, and they could focus their efforts on cleaning that and notifying those students instead of blocking everybody out.
It's crazy. I saw on the news that, like, for example, here, we had, I got a notice from the middle school last week that there was 3 people that tested positive, right? They didn't shut the schools down. I saw in New York City, they had 0.29% infection rate, and they shut the entire school district down.
Yeah.
If you have these types of technologies, you are now doing what's called your due diligence to be able to show parents that their kids are that they're doing the due diligence to do this. You don't have to shut down the schools. The damage to children is far greater than sitting in their room, locked in a room, staring at a screen for 5 hours. You know what my kids do for PE in junior high? They have to run up and down the stairs with an iPad with the time. It's hilarious. I have videos of it. And they run around inside the house, and they can't even go outside. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they could go outside, but I mean, that's their PE. I mean, this is bad for our kids, and we need these technologies to help them open up safer. And for these parents that do have very genuine concerns, I mean, I'm a parent. I'm obviously concerned. We made the decision to have our younger, kids wait for the first half, to go the second half. But again, that's, now that we have, if my school district had these tools, then I would feel a lot more comfortable, and there are districts. I mean, we have Coppell ISD here. They're working with a partner right now, and to be able to build these capabilities, because don't forget this. If you don't take anything else away from this, this is something that's a value that you're adding to your customers, because they're going to rely on you to help them build the reporting, to help them build the apps, to help them build these capabilities. It doesn't come out of the box. And so that's when you can go in and really show your value to these school districts on why they should be going through you instead of somebody else and a different vendor.
Good points. Good points.
Go
All
to the
right,
next.
Bailey.
Good. You know, why partner with us? You know, I mean, there's some things here I can quickly go through this. And we talked about, you know, cloud first. There's one on-prem. We had a school district that basically needed to get this rolled out. I remember rolling out a school district. We did a project with one of the largest in the country out of New Orleans, and it took 2 years to deploy their wireless network and their switching infrastructure.
Hey, Mark, hold on a second. Can everyone put their phone on mute? I hear a lot of background noise somewhere. Okay, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, so example of the cloud first, you know, no on-prem. It took us 2 years to that with the controller-based solution and EX switching. It took us 2 years to roll out a school district, and we just rolled out this school district here in Dallas that was not as big, but it was very large in I think a month and a half. And instead of having to do it all at nights and after school, they were doing it so fast that when the kids would go out to recess, they'd go in there, put the APs up. When the kids came back in, it was done. All through zero touch provisioning and all these things. It's crazy how fast you can deploy something and it just works, right? You know, we had that school district, that same school district just told on a customer, like a white paper, their help desk tickets have gone down by 50% already this year. We had another university that did this. They said their help desk tickets have gone down over 90%. And it's kind of ironic because that school was John Chambers' alma mater and they ripped out Cisco and put in Mist. How crazy is that? You know, there's other things with, you know, Bluetooth Low Energy. Like I said, this is patented technology. We covered it a little bit. You know, Wi-Fi connected and unconnected. In order for you to do congestion, hot zone notification, and user self-policing, you have to be able to see unconnected wireless and unconnected Bluetooth, because not everyone is going to connect to your network. But not having visibility to see them, there could be people there that are, you know, congesting and devices there that you don't see. You have to be able to see that. That's something specific to Juniper and Mist. You know, AI driven, you know, no manual calibration. You know, using AI, you have to collect a lot of data for this stuff to work. And, you know, that's why being in a hyperscaler and being a, you know, microservices architecture, we can actually do this and pull it off. And then finally, being able, we're the only ones that can do the user journey mapping and the proximity tracing with the premium analytics. You know, the others can do the congestion hot zone notifications, but when it comes to user journey mapping and contact tracing, this is specific to Juniper Mist. So these are some of the reasons why it's important and that we really have a differentiation here.
No, I agree. I agree. And again, just to remind everyone out there, if you have a specific end customer or opportunity and you want to get a little bit more in the weeds with the solution and the configuration and how it seamlessly just comes together, we're more than happy to do a session with you privately as well. I know we're covering a lot of things here today and not doing a deployment per se, but I wanted to offer that up. Okay, thanks, Mark. The next slide, Sam, this one, you're going to cover more of what we call the non-technology solutions, right? It's all the other stuff.
Right.
When you go to a school district, go to an office, you know, it's great talking about all the technology solutions, but that's not the whole solution. So why don't you cover those
Exactly. Okay, right. So that's a great point. So we've talked a whole lot about technology, and we absolutely feel that that's a strength. And as Mark said earlier, that's how we can automate a lot of these things. But there's a lot more to it. As you can see, you still have to have signage and placards to tell folks what they should do and when and how many people can be in a particular area, and just basically post up. And some of this is driven from a regulatory perspective, and others is, I think, just probably common sense. But even on item 2, you know, hand cleaner, personal privacy or personal privacy, personal protection equipment,
Yeah.
and then kind of an interesting thing like item 3, physical layout. With all this information we're collecting, now you know, maybe you're getting a whole bunch of folks congregating in a particular area. You can maybe change the arrangement of cubicles or desks and things of that nature, where you can actually control some of this congestion. Or maybe you can take some of this technology and up your cleaning requirements for a particular space. And then really, I mean, the last item here, privacy data, HIPAA, and and regulatory compliance. None of this is really revolving around technology other than the encryption aspect, but we need to control these things. And at schools, that very first part of the journey, if somebody comes in with a temperature, maybe your process is send them to the school nurse. Well, the school nurse is already required to control HIPAA data, so maybe you're okay. But you still have to define that process, and we need to help these schools come up with that particular process. Once the student gets to the nurse can take it from there. But again, I can't stress, I've been reading too many of these regulatory requirements coming from all over the place, to include OSHA, CDC, state, local, city, and it's a moving target. So not only do you have to come up with and understand what you're required to do from a regulatory perspective, but you have to keep an eye on it because it changes. So all of these things are kind of outside the boundaries of technology.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Next slide. So Sam, again, when we started our journey at Securematics of figuring out how we're going to get back into the office, it was pretty, like I said, it was pretty daunting. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And we've talked about a lot today. So what, walk us through this slide here, because we have to have some kind of an organized approach to address this issue, right? So just give us a little bit of kind of a logical steps of what we should be doing.
Absolutely. And as this shows, if you're familiar with creating security programs or things of that nature, you might be familiar with a process like this. But if you're not, or we're certainly here to help you. And so here's some things we can help you with, but that you should consider. So the very first step, evaluation of current state. Obviously, you don't know, you're not going to know how to help your customer if you don't understand where they're at today, because most have probably done something. Maybe they put up signs, maybe they've bought a mobile app where they're doing questionnaires. But you need to kind of dig into that, understand where they're at, and then you need to understand where they want to go. And this is kind of interesting because, again, there's regulatory pieces to this, and then there's political issues, there's just pure preferences, what they do and don't want to do. So, once you identify these things, the next step is to actually create a biosecurity program. And again, this is you can compare this to a cybersecurity program. All you're really doing is you're just creating a plan, and you're putting this plan down in writing, and this is what this particular organization wants to accomplish. And again, this is great because now they can say, hey, we've done our due diligence, we've come up with a plan, here it is. And then the next one we're looking at here is provide regulatory compliance assessments. So this is my point, that we can actually come and help with this, but this is really drilling down and digging into all the way from CDC, OSHA, state, local regulatory issues, and just making sure all the boxes are checked and that that particular organization is in compliance. So we've done all of this stuff, and then finally we actually get to the fun part. We get to design and implement the solution, and this is where we're back to in the world of technology, and then we get to actually apply all of these things we've been talking about today. And again, it could be, it's a very modular, flexible system, so you can apply it to the plan and make the plan come to life. And I think that's the real beauty of this whole thing. We've talked about it, we've identified what needs to be done, we've planned for it. Now we've designed the appropriate solution for that particular end customer, and then it's going to come to life. And then finally, all of that fun stuff is done. Well, it's not going to do any good if nobody's monitoring and supporting it. So we can help with that as well.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the future sessions we're going to have here. Again, the first part of the journey was to get a kiosk that, at our door. So make sure that people are coming in with a, reasonable status here on their temperature and everything. The second was to do the physical layout of the office and the signage and the PPE, all that stuff we did, which was the non-technical part of it, laying out the conference rooms differently, the desks, everything, putting in masks, gloves, everything. There's a lot of stuff to do. That's why I suggest you contact Sam if you need more information about that part of the journey. And then the physical layout of all the access points and putting those up. We actually went through and did our lanyards like we talked about, so that we can individually hand those out to the employees, so that we we could track what's going on there. I think the most interesting part of this whole setup that our journey that we went through is really what's going to be in our future sessions, is really the whole Juniper Mist premium analytics platform that we're going to do a deep dive into and show you real time what's going on and how to set it up and how to monitor things. So that's going to be a session coming up here, and you'll see more information. We'll push that out to you for that session. And then the whole another session is going to be around human resources and regulatory compliance. Like Sam said, that's a moving target. Everyone's doing the best they can on it, but we want to be able to share the latest and greatest on that. And then the third is, how does internet behaviors add value? Your customer experience, employee retention, the whole company culture. I don't know, Sam, if you want to say a few words on that last one, but I know that's your baby.
Sure. You're right. I love this thought process and this concept of the Internet of Behaviors, just because, finally we're using technology to actually improve, in this case, customers' experience. Again, waypoint finding, where's my classroom? Okay, I can look at my mobile app and find my next class. Even from a retail perspective, I know that's a little off topic, but still, there's just so many ways we can use technology today to just make life easier. And from an employee retention perspective, and even going into the company culture idea, what this is about is, don't you want to work for a company that wants to be safe, wants to be healthy, does that extra due diligence to just make sure things are safe? I know I do. And then finally, just from a competitive advantage, I think these forward-thinking companies and even schools that are taking advantage of this thing, ultimately they're going to win. I mean, they're the ones that are capitalizing on today's technology just basically make everyone's experience better and easier. So
it's a good point. And back to the company culture and a place to work that you want to be working in. Before the pandemic, we were looking at all different kinds of wellness programs, and we just look at this as an extension of the wellness program. From here on out, we want to make sure that the days of showing up with the flu and saying to everyone, hey, I'm feeling under the weather, and then half the office gets infected is kind of gone, right? We want to make sure that employees feel safe, that if they're not feeling well, they could work from home. Or they could take the time off, and most importantly, make sure you don't infect others, whether it's COVID or the flu or anything. So we want to make this an ongoing part of our culture and our benefits. So that's it for today. Now, what I'd like to do is I want to make sure we answer any questions. In the meantime, I wanted to introduce Mitch Wade. Mitch is our sales director out of the West, and we have a promotion going on at Secure Max. So Mitch, if you're on, why don't we talk through the promotion, and then we'll queue up the questions while you're doing that. Okay, Mitch?
Absolutely, Brian. Yes. So we rock and roll and music runs through the thread of Securematics. Our office, for those of you who've been to our office, we've got some really cool images throughout the entire office of beetles, doors, basically a number of rock legends. And one of the rock legends that we're sad has passed recently is Eddie Van Halen. And so we are paying homage to Eddie by doing a promotion for fourth quarter that will be giving out 3 prizes. Eddie Van Halen guitars. Brian, you can probably speak to them better than I can, but Eddie was known for putting together his own and engineering his own and innovating his own guitars. I guess they were called Frankenstrats, I believe.
That's right.
So we've got 3 Frankies, a first, second, and third prize that are tied to orders over 100,000, tied to new deal registrations, and also for new Juniper Mist partners who sign up with us. So we're really excited about this promotion, and we're seeing a lot of excitement by the channel on this. So we wanted to make you guys aware of this.
Yeah. So Mitch, how do you win one of these? You get an entry ticket for each category?
It's basically like a lottery. So every either for the 3 categories, you'd get for every $100,000 increment of, if you place an order for 500,000, you get 5 tickets. They get put into a drum, and then we're gonna basically draw the winner for the revenue prize. Same with deal registrations, and obviously same with signing up as a new Mist partner. So there'll be a lottery ticket for each of those 3 categories.
They'll put them in a drum, and then we'll pick them like lottery.
Pick them, and it'll be basically it's a lottery prize, and we'll announce these winners basically right after the first of the year.
Great. All right, Mitch. Thank you very much for reviewing that. And also, there's the promotion is attached, I think, in the handout portion of this meeting down here. So hopefully everyone can see that. Billy, do we have any questions or comments? Anything?
Yep, we do have a couple questions. First, what do you do if there are 10 people all in close proximity to each other who are trying to use the app? Won't this confuse the system trying to process the request?
No, it doesn't really work that way. I mean, if they're right next to each other, it's down within a meter, right? I mean, so if I'm in a conference room like I'm in right now, and there was 5 people around a table, I can see each 5 person. Now, of course, if kids are right next to each other, then they can see that they're not social distancing, and they can have an administrator go tell them to break it up, right? Or a teacher, right? So, but it can get down pretty. I can see if you're sitting in a cube or sitting if you look at a classroom, the way that they're set up now with the way they've distanced the desks, you can see where each individual child is and know that they're not right next to each other. And based on that number, that badge, you can identify the child with the badge number.
Yeah, don't forget, we're using, in this case, our lanyards, right? Yeah. So they're unique devices. There's a lot of things you can, a lot of other devices you can use, right? You use mobile phones. You can actually use a wristband, which would be probably more fun for some of the kids and some of the adults. But these are unique devices that are tracked. And I was asked a question before about, well, why not just use mobile phones? Well, I just, bottom line is kindergartens don't have mobile phones, right? And
I don't even give it to my junior high school kids right now because I know how addicted they get to them. So I'm waiting till they're in high school if they get a phone. My first child, I gave them to them like in 6th grade. Now that was a mistake because it's like, this is all they do. So not every child has a phone, right?
Actually, I think Beverly Hills High School has them in preschool. I think the kids have them, right? I'm only kidding. Anyway.
Yeah, they bring their little dogs to school too, so,
All right. Any other questions or comments? Hopefully that answered it.
Yeah, I believe Sam touched on this a bit earlier, but someone did ask, what is the use case for the solution once the pandemic has ended, and how does one repurpose to leverage their investment?
Right. Yeah. And that is a great question. And we've heard that one more than once. So even, the temperature sensing kiosk, for example, can be repurposed in a number of ways to include, depending on your application, attendance. Again, it's all part of that whole process of getting through the front door. Then once you're on premise, some of the other purposes that Mark brought up, again, active user shootings, just making attendance, just making sure everybody is where they're supposed to be. Mark, did you want to add to some of those use cases?
Yeah,
Or
Mark.
Brian?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I could.
my favorite, even the truancy, the hooky police, right? Letting your parents know if their kids have left campus or not, and automatically text them. There's a lot of things you can do. The attendance, but again, it's not going away. This is a new norm. Even though let's say everything this time next year is okay, everyone's had the vaccine. We're not wearing masks anymore. You're still going to have these things, like you said. This flu's not going away. How do we know this is not going to morph, right, into different strains, and we have to get a new, like we get a flu shot every year, do you have to get a COVID shot every year? I mean, there's so many things and so many unknowns at this point.
Yeah, I was going to say at Securematics, when we were going through this whole process, one of the things I looked at, is an ongoing wellness program to make sure that we give employees a flexibility if they have a temperature to not, enter the building, and give them those tools to work from home or just take a sick day off. The others around physical security, right? We're integrating the kiosk with our door system, so that'll actually open the door. And the third was around time clocks. Some employees are hourly, and this is a great way to integrate the time clock. We're going to use this beyond, and so we considered all that, and we found it a very worthwhile investment. Now, we're not going to throw it away once the pandemic is over.
And just remember one thing with these systems, especially with Mist, the way how easy and how well it works, the schools stop if your wireless goes down. You can't take attendance, you can't get content, grading, taking tests, everything is online now. So even if you're not using it for contact tracing, user journey mapping, having a robust network and a wireless system that works like this, it's crazy. Like I said, that one school district, they weren't even using this. That's not why they even bought it. They've already had a 50% reduction in help desk tickets. All right, it's a lot more effective to use. This is such critical. Schools these days rely on the network. Without the network, the school does not work.
Right. So Mark, you bring up a great point, kind of a final point here, is that's part of the wired assurance, because what happens is when you have self-healing networks, when a kid can't get on because of some reason, something happening with the network, and you have the artificial intelligence to be able to, help solve that problem proactively, that's a legacy beyond anything else. So even pre-COVID days, that was a huge advantage. It's certainly going to be an advantage when the pandemic quote is under control or over.
Yeah, and the location services for first responders. You have an emergency at the school, you can see where every child is in the building.
Yep.
You can see who's walking around, you can see where they're at, All they gotta do is have the firemen or the police just log in to the app and they see it. And guess who creates that app? You do, the partner. That's a profit center for you.
And if you're not a partner who wants to create an app, we're going to host a variety of apps at Securematics, and we'll run a session where you could take advantage of apps that have been created by third parties to be able to serve those up, right? So that's another piece of it. I'd like to thank all the panelists, thank all the people who paid attention for the last hour and a half. I'm sorry it's a little bit of hop, skip, and jump around, but there's a lot of stuff to cover. We will go deeper into some of these aspects, but we want to give you a flavor for our journey, what the value add is, how the Mist Juniper platform is just an unbelievable platform. It's made for these times and beyond. And we're also, not because we're a Juniper Mist distributor and partner using these solutions, we went for best in class, and we couldn't find a challenger. And so we're very fortunate to represent the products and use the products as well. So anyway, that's it.
Brian, not to cut you off, you just brought up a point, is the Magic Quadrant just came out last week, where we are now leader with the highest ability to execute in the Magic Quadrant for wireless and wired LANs. We've never been there before. We've always been a niche player. So within 2 years, we've now gone to the top. So we're the highest rated in the leadership quadrant for the Magic Quadrant, with the highest ability to execute. So sometimes that's there's big school districts, they won't even, accept you for an RFP if you're not in leadership. That is now gone. We're now a leader in the Magic Quadrant.
That's right. Don't just believe us, believe Gartner as well.
Exactly
So,
right.
okay. All right. We're going to sign off for now. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.